How are you guys doing? Today is Monday, November 29th, 2021. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to review the Elite matchups and performances that took place yesterday on Sunday, November 28th. But of course, before I get into that, I'm going to take a step back and just give you a quick snapshot of where we are in the calendar year. With the MLB season being over, right now we are in the midst of football season as the college football regular season is over, as there are still conference championships and bowl games left to be played. In college basketball, that season is just getting underway. Taking a look at what's going on at the professional level, the NFL is in the middle of its season, and then the NBA and, of course, the NHL are in the beginning of their seasons. I'm going to start calling the NHL once we get around to it next year. But, of course, and not to mention that looking outside of the States, there's still European clubs getting back into their weekend, or they're coming out of their weekend cycle, their weekend matchups, essentially. But first, taking a look at what's going on with college basketball, starting with the fourth-ranked team in the nation, the Kansas Jayhawks, faced off against the unranked Iona Gales in the ESPN Events Invitational. Kansas would end up beating Iona 96-83 after they outscored the Gales by 15 in the first half. The Jayhawks were led in scoring by their starting guard, Christian Braun. Christian Braun, their starting junior, would go on to finish the entire game with 18 points, 7 rebounds, and 2 steals in 34 minutes. He shot 8 for 15 from the field and 2 for 5 from 3 on the night. With this win, the fourth-ranked Jayhawks are 5-1 on the season, and with this loss, the unranked Iona Gales are 6-2. Looking at the seventh-ranked college basketball team in the nation, the Villanova Wildcats would face off against the unranked LaSalle Explorers. And Villanova would end up beating LaSalle 72-46. Villanova outscored LaSalle, they outscored them 42-17 by 25 in the first half to win this game by 26. The seventh-ranked Villanova Wildcats were led in scoring by their starting guard, Colin Gillespie. Their starting senior out of Pennsylvania would go on to finish with 13 points on the night in 29 minutes, alongside 6 rebounds and 5 assists. He shot 4 for 10 from the field, 3 for 8 from 3, and he made both of his free throw attempts on the night. With this win, the 7th-ranked Villanova Wildcats are 4-2, and unranked LaSalle is 2-3 to start its season. Looking at the 10th-ranked basketball team in the nation, the Alabama Crimson Tide hosted the unranked Miami Hurricanes. Alabama would beat Miami 96-64 after they outscored Miami by 29 in the second half after they outscored them by 3 in the first. The 10th-ranked Crimson Tide were led in scoring by their starting guard, Keon Ellis. Their senior out of Florida would go on to finish with 22 points in 29 minutes as he shot 8 for 11 from the field. He would also go on to shoot 5 for 6 from 3, and he made his only free throw attempt of the night. With this win, the 10th-ranked Alabama Crimson Tide are 6-1 on the season, and with this loss, unranked Miami is 4-3. Taking a look now at the 13th ranked team in the nation, the Arkansas Razorbacks hosted the unranked Penn Quakers, and then Arkansas was able to beat Penn 76-70 as they outscored Penn by 11 in the first half and by 5 in the second. The 13th ranked Razorbacks were led in scoring by their starting guard, J.D. Notte. Their senior out of Covington, Georgia, would go on to finish with 28 points in 36 minutes. He finished alongside his 28 points. He had 9 rebounds, 5 assists, and 2 steals in all those 36 minutes. He shot 13 for 24 from the field. And with this win, the 13th ranked Arkansas Razorbacks are 6-0, so have yet to lose a game. With this loss, unranked Penn is 3-6 on their basketball season. Looking at the 21st ranked basketball team in the nation, the Seton Hall Pirates hosted the unranked Bethune-Cookman Wildcats. Seton Hall was able to beat Bethune-Cookman 84-70, winning this game by 14 after outscoring Bethune-Cookman by 15 in the second half. The 21st ranked Seton Hall Pirates were led in scoring by their starting guard, Jared Rhoden, out of Kentucky. He will go on, out of New York. He would go on to finish with 18 points in 26 minutes as he shot 5 for 10 from the field, 2 for 5 from 3, and he would go on to shoot a perfect 6 for 6 from the foul line on the night. With this win, the Seton Hall Pirates are now 5-1. With this loss, unranked Bethune-Cookman is 1-6. Taking a look now at what's going on with the 23rd ranked team in the nation, the Florida Gators hosted the unranked Troy Trojans. Florida they would beat Troy by 39 points after outscoring Troy by 29 in the first half and by 10 in the second. The 23rd ranked Gators were led in scoring by their starting guard, Myrion Jones, their senior out of Birmingham, Alabama. And they were also led by their other starting guard, Tyree Appleby, their starting senior out of Arkansas. Of course, first looking at Jones. Jones finished with 12 points in the 28 minutes as he shot 4 for 10 from the field. All 4 of his made field goal attempts came from 3 as he was 4 for 9 from 3. Appleby finished with 12 points and 2 steals in 20 minutes as he shot 3 for 5 from the field, 2 for 4 from 3, and he made all 4 of his free throw attempts. With this win, the Florida Gators are now 6-0, and with this loss, unranked Troy is 4-3 in its season. That's what college sports is looking like. Taking a quick look at what professional sports are looking like in the States. Looking at what's going on in the NFL. Starting off in London, the Jacksonville Jaguars faced off against the Atlanta Falcons, and the Falcons were able to beat the Jaguars 21-14. Falcons outscored the Jaguars 14-3 in the first half before the Jaguars outscored the Falcons 11-7 in the second half, but it just wouldn't be close. On the losing end of this matchup, the Jacksonville Jaguars were led by their elite starting quarterback, Trevor Lawrence. He completed 23 of his 42 passes as he threw for 228 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. He also ran for 39 yards. That would be 267 total yards of offense. Jacksonville's leading rusher was their elite running back, James Robinson. He had 17 carries for 86 yards. He also had 3 receptions for 29 yards through the air as he had 115 total yards of offense. Jacksonville's leading tackler on the defensive side was Rayshon Jenkins and Miles Jack. They both finished with 8 tackles. And then Tyson Campbell would finish with the team's lone interception as he had 3 tackles. On the winning end of this matchup, the Atlanta Falcons were led by their elite starting quarterback, Matt Ryan. He would complete 19 of his 29 passes as he threw for 190 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. He also ran for 6 yards, so that's 196 total yards of offense for Matt Ryan. Atlanta's leading rusher, Cordero Patterson, finished with 16 carries for 108 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also had 2 receptions for 27 yards. That would be 135 total yards of offense with Cordero Patterson's 2 touchdowns. Atlanta's leading receiver, Russell Gage, had 6 receptions for 62 yards and the lone receiving touchdown for the Falcons. On the defensive side of the ball, Michael Walker finished with 12 tackles and Foyesade Olokun finished with 10, the second most on the team. And Daron Harmon would finish with the team's lone interception. As with this win, the Atlanta Falcons are now 5-6. With this win, the Falcons are 5-6, and with this loss, the Jacksonville Jaguars are now officially 2-9. Taking a look now at what's going on in Cincinnati, the Bengals hosted the Pittsburgh Steelers. Cincinnati was able to beat Pittsburgh 41-10 after the Bengals outscored the Steelers 31-3 in the first half before outscoring the Steelers 10-7 in the second half. On the losing end of this matchup, the Pittsburgh Steelers were led by their elite starting quarterback, Ben Roethlisberger. He would complete 24 of his 41 passes as he threw for 263 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. The Steelers' leading receiver, Deontay Johnson, had 9 receptions for 95 yards. Their second leading receiver, Chase Claypool, had 3 receptions for 82 yards on the day. Pittsburgh's leading tackler was Joe Schobert as he had 10 of them on the day. Their elite defensive tackle, Cameron Hayward, would finish with 8 tackles as he had a sack for himself. And Minkah Fitzpatrick, the Steelers' elite safety, would finish with 9 tackles, not to mention an interception for himself. On the winning end of this matchup, the Cincinnati Bengals were led by their starting quarterback, former number 1 overall pick, Joe Burrow. He threw for 190 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. He would also run for 8 yards and an additional touchdown. That's 198 yards and 2 touchdowns for Joe Burrow. Their leading rusher, Joe Mixon, had 28 carries for 165 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. The Bengals' leading receiver, T. Higgins, had 6 receptions for 114 yards and a touchdown through the air. Their leading tackler, Logan Wilson, had 6 tackles on the day. Sam Hubbard would finish with 2 tackles as he finished with a sack and a fumble recovery. Eli Apple would finish with a 15-yard interception return with his 2 tackles. And then Mike Hilton, along with his 4 tackles, would finish with a 24-yard pick six. With this win, the Cincinnati Bengals are 7-4. With this loss, the Pittsburgh Steelers are 5-1, as they were the team that drew with the Detroit Lions earlier in the season. Taking a look now at what is going on in Indianapolis, the Colts hosted the reigning Super Bowl champs, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Tampa Bay, having a long history with the Indianapolis Colts, was able to help the Buccaneers beat the Colts 38-31. The Colts outscored the Buccaneers 24-14 in the first half before the Bucs outscored the Colts 24-7 in the second. The Colts did tie the game up at 31 after the Bucs took the lead, but after the score was tied at 31, Leonard Fournette's 28-yard run with 20 seconds left would be what Tampa Bay needed in order to win this game. On the losing end of this matchup, the Indianapolis Colts were led by their starting quarterback, former MVP candidate Carson Wentz. He threw for 306 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. He also ran for 21 yards, so that's 327 total yards of offense for Carson Wentz. The Colts' leading rusher, Jonathan Taylor, had 16 carries for 83 yards and a touchdown on the ground. He even had 4 receptions for 14 yards, so that's 97 total yards of offense for Jonathan Taylor. The Colts' leading receiver, Jack Doyle, had 6 receptions for 81 yards and a touchdown. Their second leading receiver, Ashton Doolin, had 1 62-yard reception that was a touchdown. On the defensive side of the ball, Darius Leonard, their elite linebacker, led the team in tackles. He had 15 of them on the day. And then in their secondary, Isaiah Rodgers would be the only player to log an interception. On the winning end of this matchup, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were led by their goated starting quarterback, Tom Brady. He would complete 25 of his 34 passes as he threw for 226 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. He also ran for 2 yards, so that's 228 yards for the GOAT. The Buccaneers' leading rusher, Leonard Fournette, finished with 17 carries for 100 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground. He had 7 receptions for 31 yards and a touchdown through the air. That's 131 total yards of offense with his 4 touchdowns. The Buccaneers' leading receiver was their starting tight end, Rob Gronkowski. Gronkowski finished with 7 receptions for 123 yards. On the defensive side of the ball, Jordan Whitehead and Shaq Barrett each finished with 8 tackles, leading the team. Shaquille Barrett finished with 2 of the team's 3 sacks, which would be pretty well for himself. Antoine Winfield Jr. and Pierre Desir would finish with the 2 interceptions for the Buccaneers. With this win, the Bucs are now 8-3. And with this loss, the Indianapolis Colts are now sitting at 6-6. Taking a look now at what is going on in Miami, the Dolphins hosted the Carolina Panthers. The Dolphins would end up beating the Carolina Panthers 33-10 in front of their home fans. The Dolphins would outscore the Panthers 21-10 in the first half before shutting them out 12-0 in the second. On the losing end of this matchup, the Panthers would be led by their starting quarterback, former MVP Cam Newton. Newton would throw for 92 yards and 2 interceptions. He also ran for 5 yards, and his only touchdown came on the ground, so he had 97 total yards of offense. Carolina's leading receiver, DJ Moore, had 4 receptions for 103 yards on the day. And on the defensive side of the ball, the Panthers' leading tackler was Shaq Thompson. He and Dante Jackson each finished with double-digit tackles. Shaq Thompson finished with 13 and Dante Jackson finished with 11. And then on the winning end of this matchup, the Miami Dolphins were led by their young elite starting quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa. Tua would complete 27 of his 31 passes as he threw for 230 yards and a touchdown. The Dolphins' leading rusher, Myles Gaskin, finished with 16 carries for 49 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. He even had 3 yards through the air, so that's 52 total yards of offense. Miami's leading receiver, Jalen Waddle, their first-round pick, finished with 9 receptions for 137 yards and a touchdown. On the defensive side of the ball, Christian Wilkins and Eric Rowe led the team in tackles as they each had 5 of them. Christian Wilkins had a sack. Jalen Phillips finished with 4 tackles as he had 3 of the team's 5 sacks. Nick Needham and Javon Holland would each finish with an interception, as their elite corner, Xavier Howard, would finish with an interception as well to go along with his lone tackle. With this win, the Miami Dolphins are now 5-7, and with this loss, the Carolina Panthers are 5-7 as well. Taking a look now at what is going on in Boston, the New England Patriots hosted the AFC South leading Tennessee Titans. The Patriots would end up beating the Titans 36-13, so both teams would even their records at 8-4. The Patriots outscored the Titans 16-13 in the first half before shutting them out 20-0 in the second half. On the losing end of this matchup, the Tennessee Titans were led by their starting quarterback, Ryan Tannehill. Tannehill threw for 93 yards, a touchdown, and an interception, and he would run for 24 additional. He would finish with 117 total yards of offense. Their leading rusher, Dontrell Hilliard finished with 12 carries for 131 yards and a touchdown. He also had 2 yards through the air, so that's 133 total yards of offense. Deontay Foreman finished with the second most rushing yards on the team. He had 19 carries for 109 yards. He also had 3 receiving yards. That's 112 total yards of offense. On the defensive side of the ball, Kevin Byard finished with 12 tackles as he had a sack. On the winning end of this matchup, Mac Jones from the Alabama Crimson Tide would end up throwing for 310 yards and 2 touchdowns. He even ran for an additional 11 yards. He finished with 321 total yards of offense. And then their leading receiver, Jacoby Myers, finished with 5 receptions for 98 yards. And their second leading receiver, Kendrick Bourne, finished with 5 receptions for 61 yards as he had both of the team's receiving touchdowns. On the defensive side of the ball, the New England Patriots were led by Jawan Bentley in tackles. He had 10 tackles and a sack. J.C. Jackson would finish with the team's lone interception. And of course, with this win, the New England Patriots are 8-4. With this loss, the Tennessee Titans are 8-4 as well. Taking a look now at what is going on taking a look at what's going on in New York. The Giants hosted the Philadelphia Eagles in this NFC East matchup. The Giants would end up getting the best of the Eagles, winning it 13-7. The Giants shut out the Eagles in the first half, 3-0. And then in the second half, they would outscore the Eagles, of course, 10-7. On the losing end of this matchup, the Philadelphia Eagles were led by their starting quarterback, Jalen Hurts. Hurts threw for 129 yards and 3 interceptions. He was also the Eagles' leading rusher. He had 77 yards on the ground. He would go on to finish with 206 total yards of offense on the day. And the Eagles' second leading rusher, Boston Scott, had 15 carries for 64 yards as he had a touchdown. He would also have 8 yards through the air, so that would be 72 total yards of offense. The Eagles' leading tackler on the defensive side of the ball was Alex Singleton. He had 11 tackles on the day, 3 of them for loss. And on the winning end of this matchup, the New York Giants were led by their starting quarterback out of Duke, Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones threw for 202 yards and a touchdown. He also ran for 30. That's 232 total yards of offense. The New York Giants' leading tackler on the defensive side of the ball was Xavier McKinney. He had 8 tackles on the day. And Darnay Holmes, Tay Crowder, and Xavier McKinney, all 3 of them would finish with an interception to help the Giants come away with their 4th win of the season. With this win, the New York Giants are now 4-7. With this loss, the Philadelphia Eagles are now 5-7. Now, of course, taking a look at what is going on in Houston, the Texans hosted the New York Jets. And in this one, the New York Jets would actually get the better of the Houston Texans. The Jets would actually go on to win this game 21-14. This one would come down to the wire as looking at how the scoring in this matchup ended. The Jets would get outscored by the Texans 14-11 in the first half. The Jets would have to shut the Texans out 10-0 in the second half to come from behind and win. They took the lead in the third quarter off of a 4-yard touchdown run from Zach Wilson, and that field goal put them up by a touchdown. Or the field goal in the fourth quarter put them up by a touchdown. On the losing end of this matchup, the Texans were led by their starting quarterback, Tyrod Taylor. He threw for 158 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. He even ran for 30. That's 188 total yards of offense. And then in their receiving core, their leading receiver, Brandon Cooks, had 3 receptions for 45 yards and a reception. On the defensive side of the ball, Zach Cunningham and Eric Murray each finished with 8 tackles, leading the team. And Tavier Thomas finished with the team's lone interception as he had 4 tackles. On the winning end of this matchup, Zach Wilson, the number 2 overall pick from the 2021 NFL Draft, would throw for 145 yards and an interception. He even ran for 3 yards, and his only touchdown came on the ground. So that's 148 total yards and a touchdown from Zach Wilson from scrimmage. The Jets' leading tackler on the defensive side of the ball was C.J. Mosley. He had 8 tackles on the day. John Franklin Myers had 3 tackles as he had 2 of the team's 5 sacks, and he even had a 32-yard interception. With this win, the New York Jets are now 3-8. With this loss, the Houston Texans are now 2-9 on the season. Of course, following that up, to take a look at what's going on in the Mile High City, the Denver Broncos took on the LA Chargers from within their division, and the Broncos would end up beating the Chargers 28-13. The Broncos outscored the Chargers 14-7 in the first half before outscoring the Chargers 14-6 in the second half, all those points coming in the fourth quarter. On the losing end of this matchup, the LA Chargers were led by their young elite starting quarterback, Justin Herbert. He would complete 28 of his 44 passes as he threw for 303 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. He was even the team's leading rusher as he had 36 yards on the ground. That's 339 total yards of offense. The Chargers' leading receiver, Keenan Allen, their elite wide receiver, had 7 receptions for 85 yards. Their second leading rusher, Austin Eckler, was also their second leading receiver. He had 12 carries for 31 yards on the ground. He had 6 receptions for 68 yards through the air as he finished with 99 total yards of offense. On the defensive side of the ball, the Chargers were led in tackles by Kazir White. He had 12 of them. Their elite defensive end, Joey Bosa, would finish with 4 tackles as he finished with the team's lone sack. And the Chargers' elite safety, Derwin James Jr., would finish with the team's lone interception as he had 7 tackles for himself and 2 tackles for loss. On the winning end of this matchup, the Denver Broncos were led by their starting quarterback, Teddy Bridgewater, out of Louisville. He threw for 129 yards and a touchdown. He even ran for 10 yards and an additional touchdown. That's 133 total yards and 2 total touchdowns for Teddy Bridgewater. The Broncos' leading rusher, Melvin Gordon III, had 17 carries for 83 yards, and along with a 5-yard reception, giving him 88 total yards of offense for the day. Their second leading rusher, Javonte Williams, had 14 carries for 54 yards on the ground and a touchdown. He even led the Broncos in receiving yards as he had 3 receptions for 57 yards. He finished with 111 total yards of offense for the day. On the defensive side of the ball, Kyle Fuller finished with 9 tackles. And then additionally on the defense, or in the secondary, Pat Surtain II would finish with 2 interceptions, returning one of them for an interception as he had 70 total interception yards. With this win, the Denver Broncos are now 6-5 on the season. And of course, with this loss, the Los Angeles Chargers within the same division are also 6-5. Taking a look now at what's going on in Green Bay, the Packers hosted the LA Rams in what could be a potential playoff matchup. The Packers would end up beating the Rams 36-28. The Packers outscored the Rams 20-17 in the first half before outscoring the Rams 16-11 in the second half. On the losing end of this matchup, the LA Rams were led by their starting quarterback, Matthew Stafford. He threw for 302 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. The Rams' leading rusher, Darrell Henderson Jr., had 16 carries for 55 yards. He had 4 receptions for 18 yards and a touchdown through the air as he had 73 total yards of offense. LA's leading receiver, Cooper Kupp, had 7 receptions for 96 yards. Their second leading receiver, Van Jefferson, had 3 receptions for 93 yards as he had a touchdown as well. And then their third leading receiver, Odell Beckham Jr., finished with 5 receptions for 81 yards as he had a receiving touchdown as well. On the defensive side of the ball, Troy Reeder would lead the Rams in tackles as he had 13 of them. And then on the winning end of this matchup, the Green Bay Packers were led by their goated starting quarterback, Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers completed 28 of his 45 passes, throwing for 307 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also had a touchdown on the ground, so that's 307 total yards with 3 touchdowns for him. The Packers' leading rusher was A.J. Dillon. He had 20 carries carries for 69 yards. He had 5 receptions for 21 yards as well, and a touchdown, his only touchdown coming through the air. He would go on to finish with 90 total yards of offense for the Packers. The Packers' leading receiver was their elite wide receiver, Davante Adams. He finished with 8 receptions for 104 yards. Their second leading receiver, Randall Cobb, had 4 receptions for 95 yards and a touchdown. Their third leading receiver, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, had 4 receptions for 50 yards. On the defensive side of the ball, Chris Barnes finished with 9 tackles, leading the team, and Rasul Douglas finished with a 33-yard pick six to, of course, help the Packers win. With this win, the Packers are now 9-3 as they are still undefeated at Lambeau. With this loss, the Los Angeles Rams are now 7-4 on the season. Following that matchup, taking a look at what's going out in San Francisco, the San Francisco 49ers hosted the Minnesota Vikings. The Niners were able to beat the Vikings 34-26 after both teams were tied at 14 in the first half. The Niners would outscore the Vikings 20-12 in the third quarter as neither team scored in the fourth. And of course, looking at how the scoring ended, just looking at how it fared for the Vikings on the losing end. Their starting quarterback, Kirk Cousins, would throw for 238 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Their elite running back, Dalvin Cook, had 10 carries for 39 yards on the ground. He was also their second leading receiver as he had 6 receptions for 64 yards through the air. He would finish with 103 total yards of offense for Minnesota. Their elite wide receiver, Justin Jefferson, would finish with 4 receptions for 83 yards on the day. Their third leading receiver, Adam Thielen, had 5 receptions for 62 yards as he had both of the team's receiving touchdowns. On the defensive side of the ball, the Vikings were led in tackles by their elite safety out of Notre Dame, Harrison Smith. And then he would also finish with the team's lone interception as he returned it 10 yards. On the winning end of this matchup, the San Francisco 49ers were led by their starting quarterback, Tom Brady's former backup, Jimmy Garoppolo. He threw for 230 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. San Francisco's running game was led by Elijah Mitchell. He had 27 carries for 133 yards and a touchdown on the ground. He would also finish with 5 receptions for 35 yards. He would finish with 168 total yards of offense. The 49ers' second leading rusher, Deebo Samuel, had 6 receptions for 66 yards as he had 2 touchdowns on the ground. He also had a 12-yard reception, giving him 78 total yards on the day. San Francisco's leading receiver, Brandon Ayuk, had 3 receptions for 91 yards on the day, leading the team. And then Azeez Al-Shaair led the team in tackles, and he finished with 8 tackles on the day. He had the team's lone fumble recovery as well. Nick Bosa, and Azeez Al-Shaair also had the team's lone interception as he returned to 24 yards. Their elite defensive end out of Ohio State, Nick Bosa, would finish with 2 tackles and the team's only sack. With this win, the San Francisco 49ers are now 6-5 on the season. And of course, with this loss, the Minnesota Vikings are now 5-6 on their season as well. Last but not least, taking a look at the Sunday Night Football matchup, the Baltimore Ravens hosted the Cleveland Browns in Lamar Jackson's return. Lamar and the Ravens would end up beating the Browns 16-10 after the Ravens outscored the Browns by 6-3 in the first half. The Ravens outscored the Browns 10-7 in the second half in what would be a really close matchup from beginning to end. On the losing end of this matchup, the Cleveland Browns were led by their starting quarterback, Baker Mayfield, out of Oklahoma. Mayfield threw for 247 yards and a touchdown, running for an additional 4. That's 251 yards of offense. The Browns were led through the air by Jarvis Landry as he had 6 receptions for 111 yards. On the defensive side of the ball, Ronnie Harrison Jr. led the team in tackles as he had 14 of them. Jeremiah Owusu-Karamoah finished with 13 tackles as he had half of a sack. Anthony Walker had 12 tackles as well. Their elite defensive end, Myles Garrett, finished with 5 tackles and a sack, one of the 2. And then the team would finish with 4 interceptions as Grant Delpit, Denzel Ward, John Johnson III, and Ronnie Harrison Jr. would each add an interception to their tallies for their careers. On the winning end of this matchup there, the Ravens' elite starting quarterback, Lamar Jackson, would complete 20 of his 32 passes as he threw for 165 yards, 1 touchdown, and 4 interceptions. He also ran for an additional 68 yards, giving him 233 total yards of offense on the day. The Ravens' leading receiver, Mark Andrews, had 4 receptions for 65 yards as he had a receiving touchdown. On the defensive side of the ball, Patrick Queen and Marlon Humphrey, the Ravens' elite corner, would lead the team in tackles. Queen would recover a fumble for himself as well. And then with this win, the Baltimore Ravens are now 8-3 on the season. With this loss, the Cleveland Browns are 6-6. Taking a look at what's going on in the NBA following yesterday's matchup, starting off in the Staples Center, the Los Angeles Clippers hosted the Golden State Warriors, and the Warriors would end up getting the better of the Clips, winning it 105-90 after they outscored the Clips by 13 in the second half. The Warriors would go on on the losing end on this matchup. First off, the Los Angeles Clippers were led in scoring by their elite starting shooting guard out of Fresno State, Paul George. He finished with a third of the team's points as he had 30 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists alongside 8 turnovers in 37 minutes. George shot 11 for 24 from the field, 3 for 7 from 3, and 5 for 6 from the foul line. On the winning end of this matchup, the Golden State Warriors were led in scoring by their goated starting point guard, Stephen Curry. He finished with 33 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, and 6 steals in 35 minutes. He shot 12 for 22 from the field, 7 for 13 from 3, and he made both of his free throw attempts on the night. With this win, the Golden State Warriors are now 18-2, and with this loss, the Los Angeles Clippers are now 11-9. Jumping out to Indianapolis, the Indiana Pacers hosted the defending NBA champs, the Milwaukee Bucks. The Bucks would end up beating the Pacers 118-100 as they would outscore the Pacers by 17 in the middle 2 quarters, outscoring them by 12 in the third. The Pacers on the losing end were led in scoring by their starting shooting guard out of Michigan, Caris LeVert. Caris LeVert finished with 23 points in 27 minutes as he shot 9 for 13 from the field, 4 for 5 from 3, and he made one of his 2 free throw attempts on the night. The Milwaukee Bucks were led in scoring by their elite starting power forward, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Antetokounmpo finished with 26 points, 13 rebounds, 3 assists, and 5 turnovers in 33 minutes. He shot 10 for 15 from the field and 6 for 10 from the foul line. Their starting point guard, Drew Holiday, finished with 23 points, 7 rebounds, and 9 assists in 31 minutes. He shot 11 for 21 from the field on the night. And with this win, the Milwaukee Bucks are now 13-8. And with this loss, the Indiana Pacers are now 9-13. Taking a look now at what's going on north of the border, the Toronto Raptors hosted the Boston Celtics. The Celtics would end up beating the Raptors 109-97. They won this game by 12 after they outscored the Raptors by 9 in the second half. The Raptors were led in scoring by their starting shooting guard, Fred VanVleet. VanVleet finished with 27 points, 6 rebounds, and 2 steals in 40 minutes. He shot 8 for 16 from the field, 5 for 10 from 3, and 6 for 7 from the foul line. Their starting small forward, Scotty Barnes, finished with 21 points, 7 rebounds, and 2 steals in 37 minutes. He shot 7 for 16 from the field, 4 for 9 from 3, and 3 for 4 from the foul line. Their elite starting power forward, Pascal Siakam, finished with 18 points, 7 rebounds, and 5 assists in 38 minutes. He shot 8 for 19 from the field, and he made both of his free throw attempts on the night. The Boston Celtics were led in scoring by their starting point guard, Marcus Smart. He finished with 21 points, 8 rebounds, and 6 assists in 36 minutes. He shot 7 for 16 from the field and 4 for 10 from 3. And then their elite starting small forward, Jason Tatum, finished with 8 points, 7 rebounds, and 10 assists in 38 minutes. Tatum shot 2 for 16 from the field, 1 for 5 from 3, and 3 for 4 from the foul line. With this win, the Boston Celtics are now 11-10. With this loss, the Toronto Raptors are now 9-12, just to get a sense of where they are at this point in the year. Taking a look now at what's going on in Memphis, the Grizzlies hosted the Sacramento Kings. The Grizzlies would get the better of the Kings, winning this one 128-101. The Grizzlies would go on to outscore the Kings by 11, or they outscored the Kings by 24 in the first half and by an additional 8 in the third quarter. The Sacramento Kings on the losing end of this matchup were led in scoring by their shooting guard off the bench, Buddy Hield. Buddy Hield finished with 14 points and 6 rebounds in 29 minutes as he shot 5 for 17 from the field and a perfect 3 for 3 from the foul line. On the winning end of this matchup, the Memphis Grizzlies were led in scoring by their starting small forward out of Oregon, Dylan Brooks. Dillon Brooks finished with 21 points, 6 rebounds, and 2 steals in 21 minutes. Dillon Brooks would go on to shoot 8 for 17 from the field and a perfect 4 for 4 from the foul line. With this win, the Memphis Grizzlies are now 10-10, and with this loss, the Sacramento Kings are now 8-13 on the year. Taking a look now at what went down in Staples Center for the second half of the day, or for the second matchup of the day, the LA Lakers hosted the Detroit Pistons, and the Lakers were able to beat the Pistons 110-106. They would win this game by 4 after they outscored the Pistons by 10 in the third quarter. The Pistons were led in scoring by their starting small forward, Jeremy Grant. He finished with 32 points and 6 rebounds in 33 minutes. He shot 11 for 20 from the field, 4 for 6 from 3, and a perfect 6 for 6 from the foul line. The LA Lakers were led in scoring by their goated starting small forward, LeBron James. He finished with 33 points, 5 rebounds, 9 assists, and 2 steals in 37 minutes. He shot 12 for 20 from the field, 4 for 9 from 3, and 5 for 8 from the foul line. Their elite starting point guard, Russell Westbrook, would finish with 25 points, 6 rebounds, and 9 assists in 37 minutes. He shot 10 for 16 from the field, 1 for 3 from 3, and 4 for 8 from the foul line. And then their elite starting power forward, Anthony Davis, would finish with 24 points, 10 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, and 3 blocks in 38 minutes. He shot 10 for 15 from the field, a perfect 2 for 2 from 3, and 2 for 3 from the foul line. With this win, the Los Angeles Lakers are now 11-11 on the year. And with this loss, the Detroit Pistons are now 4-16. That is what the NBA is looking like as we take a look at what's going on outside of professional sports in the U.S. Looking first at the Premier League matchups from yesterday, Manchester City hosted West Ham United and was able to pull away with a 2-1 win, scoring their first goal from their German midfielder Ilkay Gundogan, and Fernandinho out of Brazil scoring the 90th minute goal to give them what they needed. Chelsea hosted Manchester United, and that game finished as a 1-1 draw. Manchester United struck first as their elite British forward Jadon Sancho would score in the 50th minute. Chelsea's lone goal will come in the 69th minute from their penalty kick taker Jorginho. Taking a look at what's going on in La Liga, Atletico Madrid faced off against Cadiz, and Atletico Madrid was able to pull away with a 4-1 win as all 4 of their goals came in the second half. Their second of the 4 coming from their elite French forward Antoine Griezmann in the 70th minute. And taking a look at what's going on in Italy, Napoli, sitting at the top of the table, was able to pull away with a 4-0 win against Lazio as 2 of their goals came from Mertens. In Ligue 1, PSG faced off against Saint-Etienne as Marquinhos would score 2 goals. The third goal will come from their elite Argentinian center attacking mid, Angel Di Maria. And right now, that is everything that I have for you in terms of yesterday's sports. First, I want to thank the ESPN, the FIFA, the NCAA, the NBA, and the NFL websites for giving me all the facts and figures that I needed. And of course, I do have 2 individual profiles to do today, but after those and after all of the exhibitions today, I will come back tomorrow with another episode of The Elite on Tuesday, November 30th, 2021. And of course, with that said, I want to thank everyone for listening to all 38 minutes of this piece. I hope all is well, and I really hope to catch you all tomorrow on Tuesday the 30th with another episode. And until then, thanks for listening. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you with more tomorrow with another piece. Peace out.